Obviously, nobody wants to see cuts to vital services, but there's been talk in political circles recently of the need to try and look at reduced state spending in anticipation of a potential fall off in the coming years if the tariffs end up having a devastating effect, as many people suspect it might, that we can't keep splashing out cash the way we have been over the last decade and to the level we've gotten used to. Do you think there's any merit to that, at least from making the state more efficient? Is that something that we should be looking at in terms of healthcare spending and all these other areas that have ballooned with relatively little to show for it?
No, Ben, in terms of ourselves, one of the big things we have is infrastructural deficit in this country that actually requires spending. So top of the list for that would be our housing services. We can't remove any capacity for spending in that area. Obviously disability provision, healthcare provision, we want to move towards Sláintecare. I mean, for me, I'm a social democrat who believes in the politics of interventionists, so I don't believe removing money from our economy is going to benefit us. We've seen in terms of COVID, for example, when the state didn't deploy the same austerity that they deployed during the recession, I mean, we very clearly had a more quicker kind of rebounds, and I think making sure that we have the same connection between the workforce and their employers through supports where necessary, that's going to be really important. We've seen a couple of weeks ago in Europe where they had it was effectively an arms conference where they talked about 800 billion in loans now being made available. Look, we need social infrastructure. If that's through the European Union, so be it, but we can't be removing capacity for spending in our own economy.
I think it's essential that we should have been doing it anyway, is focus on our indigenous industries, focus on new markets, and that's why we've called for a marketing fund to be provided for a lot of the companies that will find themselves in difficulties. This is an eye-opener for a lot of us. Perhaps we didn't understand fully the extent of our dependency on the major global markets. So we need to focus in on our indigenous companies and support them absolutely. And also we've seen a 30% drop in tourism, foreign tourism coming to Ireland in the month of February. I think that's as a result of the instability that has been created by Trump and indeed Putin, and that's something that we must look at as well and get ourselves out there and market Ireland as a place to come and visit and stay here.
But assuming obviously we that all sounds reasonable. But in addition to that, do you think that making cuts in certain non-essential areas, of course you're not going to cut essential services, but do you think looking at where we can cut the fat, as it were, when it comes to state spending would be useful now while we have a little bit of time to react?
Cutting the fat, as you call it, is something we should be doing all the time in terms of public procurement and things like that. So that's an issue we deal with on a case-by-case basis. And certainly government efficiency is a pivotal point, and it's something we should be looking at irrespective of tariffs or global instability in the economies.
But I think the critical point is that we've had surpluses for the last number of years, so it's important that we don't fall into the trap of talking about cuts to public services at this point in time. The public finances still remain in a healthy position, and it remains to be seen what the actual impact is going to be. Jack, did you have a question?
The reality, Ben, for us is that when you look at what happened in 1929, it took 12 months in 1929 when the stock market exploded in 1929 to cross the Atlantic. When Lehman Brothers fell in 2008, it took about 8 seconds for it to cross the Atlantic. The tariffs are slightly different in that way, that they're going to be a knock-on effect that is going to creep in slowly but surely in the next 6 to 9 months. That's the reality of it. Yes, we have to curtail spending. We've always been a party, when we came together as an elected members a year ago, we've always agreed that there has to be value for money, that we have to stop the wastage, such as OPW. We have to stop the wastage in government departments. So I think what we need to do there is start cutting back the bone and seeing where we could cut back on wastage, first of all, before we start implying draconian measures upon the Irish public. It's going to be tough enough, but you see, look, we have to take, when you look at Warren Buffett and you see what he's done in divesting himself in the last 9 months, which is what we should have been doing as a government, watching what he was doing. When you see what he's doing and how he's been working, look at the big companies, look at the big tech companies, look at what they're putting together, look at how they're reacting, and you see the slowdown in the process and the rest of it. It is happening slightly because we're being told here in the Department of Housing that they cut a lot of budgets for local authorities as well when it came to tenant in situ, which has a huge effect on the most vulnerable in society. So the last thing we want to see is the most vulnerable being disciplined by this because of international tariffs. What we want to see is cut back, good value for money, ensuring that we're not wasting money. And God knows you and your colleagues here have uncovered enough waste in the last 12 months of what's going on in this country, but that's the good place to start. Let's Let's take the fleshy meat first before you start hurting people at the bone.
Yeah, we've said since the very start when Independent Ireland was set up, value for money. You've mentioned in your question about the money that's been spent all around the country. We haven't got value for money. We only have to look at the likes of a bicycle shed here, a hut. Between the two of them, it's €2 million. What would that have done in different areas? That's not value for money. So we're looking across Ishcairn. We're looking for value for money from Ishcairn. If you look at any other business model that is registered in this country, which is a taxpayer, the same as everyone else that works in this country, you look at them when they go out for their business and they're being audited, and they have to make their profits along with doing work. Why can't we use that model against our department's model to make sure we get value for money? That means the cuts that we're looking at coming down the line will be absorbed into getting value for money on projects that are already there. Most of the projects are taken up on paperwork. Administration at the very start of it, and if you look at engineers going out looking at different things, that's fine. But then you see the amount of engineering that goes on over it. There's 4 or 5 sectors doing it, the same job. That's not fine. So simplify the system, get accountability, get value for money. That's what we're about. I was with the Rural Bus Link. They told me that their budget is now going to be cut. I was with the Meals on Wheels here last week. They told me they are now being cut. These are vulnerable people. These are not the places we want to cut. We want to make sure that the money that's been invested in this country is managed properly, value for money properly, and that way we can actually look after all the other people that are vulnerable in this country by not spending more, by making sure that we manage our money.